And welcome to Full Disclosure, a podcast project conceived entirely to let me spend more time with interesting people than I would ever get on the radio. Jack Thorne, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Have you brought your Emmy?
I have not.
What?
I know.
Last week, you
Yes.
received that for Adolescence, which we will work our way towards and indeed beyond. But that must have been an exciting moment. I got looking at your Wikipedia page earlier, and you've got more awards than... I don't know who I associate. You say more holidays than Judith Chalmers. Who do you say more awards than? Jack Thorne, possibly. You've got, but was the Emmy very special?
Dench.
More awards than Judi Dench. Yes,
I have not got more awards than Judi Dench.
I bet you have. Was it a very special one, this, or do they all blur into one after a while?
It was a very, very special one. I've never been to the Primetime Emmys before. I've never been nominated for an Emmy before. And being there, it was amazing when the show won. It was amazing when Steve and I won for our writing, but to be there when Steve won for acting, when Stephen won for the best actor, that was amazing because he is an actor's actor. He's a writer's actor. He's a director's actor. We all love him, and everyone was telling us beforehand Colin Farrell's going to win, and that's okay. And then Steve won, and it was just where you on TV they showed this sort of Ashley Walters literally leapt on top of him, and there was a brilliant tweet I saw afterwards, which was just like, yeah, that's the British way. When we're happy, we beat each other up. and there was a real sense of Stephen got absolutely mullered by everyone around him because we're all so happy for him.
It struck outsiders and observers as an extraordinarily tight cast even before it won those awards, and it had to be, I guess, because of the nature of doing everything in one take and the subject matter,
and that's also because of Phil, our brilliant director, and it's because of Stephen and the atmosphere that was fostered on set, which was like we were having a really nice summer together, working very, very hard when we needed to, but spending a lot of time together when the cameras weren't rolling too. And it was one of those sorts of dreamy times when everyone got on and everything happened right, which you hope for on every single set, but happens so rarely.
And writing can be a very solitary business, and a lot of your younger years were typified by solitude.
Yes.
You clearly love being part of a big, warm, lovely collaboration.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I am a TV writer, but I'm also a theatre writer, and in theatre, that's what we do. We spend, weeks together in a room going, how does this work? Why doesn't this get fixed like this? And the difference between Adolescence and most TV shows is on most TV shows you're filming scene 16 of Ep 4 and then scene 2 of Ep 3, and you're talking to the actors, going through all the different bits and why they would be feeling this way in this moment, whereas actually there was a real freshness to the fact that we were telling the story each time from start to finish, and we could see it and we could examine it and we could talk about it, and that meant that everyone was able to play a role in the script, and that sort of sense of shared authorship was just brilliant.
And it means that you, as the co-writer with Stephen Graham, that you're not precious. You're happy. When you talk about co-authorship, it really is a sort of collaborative.
Yeah, it's good.
Where did the idea come from? When did you first say, who said to who, let's shoot all 4 episodes in one take?
That was Stephen. It was Stephen and Phil, and that was right from the start. And they made this brilliant film, Boiling Point, which Stephen had sent to me before all the mixing and stuff had been done, to say, what do you think of this? So I was a massive fan of it already, the idea of it. And then he said, yeah, we want to do something on TV using the one shot. And I was like, great, sign me up.
Struck me until literally this moment, listening to you, that it's a bridge, isn't it, between theatre and television, because you're doing it in exactly the same way as a play, but not filming a play. It's specifically being made for television. It's not like going to one of those national theatre screenings, but it is actually much closer to the...
It's the difference is that the director's eye is a lot more present. What brilliant directors do in theatre and I've seen it the moment it happens, when suddenly a director's eye appears and the whole stage transforms. But in this, the eye was very naked. You were very aware of the decisions that Matt and Phil were making. Matt Lewis, our brilliant DOP, and the first episode we shot was episode 3, which is the episode with Jamie in a training centre, and watching them make the decisions as to where the camera pointed during conversation, because that was possibly the hardest episode to shoot, because normally in those situations you would be shooting, it's exactly the same situation we're in now, and there would be a camera shot on you, and then they turn the camera around and shoot on me, and then they do a 2-shot, and then they do another 2-shot, and then they do probably some sort of clever shots, right? And there would be 5 shots that told the story of the scene. With this, they were making decisions. Okay, we're going to spend 8 lines where we're not going to see what you're saying at all. We're just going to spend it entirely on my face and see how I'm receiving what you're saying, and them making the decisions as to where the audience's attention needed to be at any moment was extraordinary to watch.
I said we'd work towards it, but we're up to our knees in it already.
Yes,
so
sorry.
No, I love it. So we'll finish it and then rewind. So did you have? It's 2 rather obvious questions, really. Did you have any inkling while you were making it that you were making something that was going to be not just enormous, but kind of epochal? And secondly, when did you realise just how mad things were going after it started screening?
The first question, no. I knew I was part of something special.
Sure.
I knew
that.
But
that's a familiar feeling for you, Jack.
It's really not. But that feeling of being part of something where because we could watch each episode. So even when I wasn't on set, I was watching a live take.
Yes.
Of through my computer of exactly what was happening. So because we were seeing it being put together, I could feel how brilliant the performances were. I could see what Phil and Matt were able to do, and I was going, "This is something great." In terms of the madness, it was within days, and it was all the noise and everything from outside, and suddenly people wanting to talk to you and all that kind of stuff. But it was also, I got so many messages from friends from school and things like that. And normally when you release things into the world, you get a message from your mum, you get a message from your sister, you get a couple of messages from people that are nice to you, and then that's it. There's silence, and then you're observing what the world is. And then if people like it, you'll bump into them 3 months later and they'll say, "I like that thing you did on the BBC. That was really good. That really moved me," or "That did something to me." Here, I was getting messages from people, that I hadn't spoken to in years, saying, "I've just had a chat with my 14-year-old that your show inspired," and that was both amazing, and then with everything else started to get a little bit scary. Not in a sort of like, but just in that, how do you navigate
the
this?
Size of it is
how do you navigate this?
Yes, absolutely.
But it's something I've wanted all my life. And being part of it was amazing. And
the reason why I say you should be familiar with the feeling of being part of something special is just that anyone who's even cast a cursory eye over your CV, presumably there is a familiar rigmarole for your credits. Like when people introduce you or talk to you, they talk about Harry Potter and the Cursed Child in the West End. They talk about This Is England, Adolescence obviously now, but previously His Dark Materials, maybe The Fades, Kiri on the telly, and then films like Wonder, Enola Holmes, The Aeronauts. Is there anything that doesn't make the usual list from your long list of credits that you wish did, that you think actually does deserve?
Not really.
So but, sort of the hierarchy is quite natural then.
The weird thing is, and you may have had this, the brackets after your name change. Like that when I was starting out, it was always Skins and Shameless in brackets after my name, and then it turned to Harry Potter, and now it's turned to Adolescence. So it's that sort. It's watching that evolution that's really interesting, and you hope always that there's going to be something coming up that that replaces the brackets. I don't know whether anything will ever replace Adolescence, frankly, and I'm okay with that. Stephen and I said on the night, we'll never breathe this air again. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, and we're going to really love breathing this air while we're here.
That's lovely. That's so lovely to hear. Right, let's start at the beginning then, which I think was in Bristol.
Yes.
And a nice, happy family, but political family. I mean, you were conscious from a very, very early age of causes and principles, I think. Yes.
Lots of marches, lots of protests, lots of turning up to places, eating Welsh cakes on various different bits of this and bits of that. And my mum went to jail for the C&D. My dad
What did she do?
She sat in front of traffic. They were filling the jails in order to protect people who were doing things on the front line. They had this. It was, I think, it was virtually exclusively C&D women.
Gosh.
And then they were, and the idea was that they would all take the prison time, and that there would be a sort of statement in the fact that they were all in prison. But a lot of people got put into houses instead of prison, and some took fines instead of taking the prison. But my mum, for some reason, and my mum's a little lady, my mum for some reason was identified as a cheerleader, do I mean cheerleader?
Or
no,
ringleader.
Ringleader.
Yeah.
Ringleader's the word
both.
I'm looking.
They both work.
Yeah. And
there were no pom-poms, to be clear, on this protest.
So she was given 2 weeks. And
how old were you at that point?
I think it was before I was born.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah. But that's the sort of, those are the stories that get repeated time and time again. But she was. They were involved in everything all the time. And
that has an impact on you, knowing that you're growing up in an environment where people believe they can make a difference.
Yes. In fact, they expect us all to be trying to make a difference. My dad, after he retired, was at the Citizens Advice Bureau, and then stopped because he was 70 odd, and he was like, I should stop now and enjoy my retirement. And then 6 months later started again because he said, I couldn't read the paper if I wasn't trying to change the world. And that's my dad all the way through. He believes it. Oh. And he expects us to believe it.
It's a beautiful credo.
Yes. And it's hard to be the child of those parents sometimes, and I think we've all struggled in our different ways.
Yes.
But we also admire them all hugely.
Because they walk the walk.
They walk the walk, yeah.
It wasn't a humorless house, though, by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
I've got a story about your father dressing up as a traffic cone. I don't know how.
Yeah. that was he did a pantomime type musical called Motorway Magic, in which he played Auntie Connie, who was a pantomime dame. And dad's full of life. But I wouldn't say it was like the dinner table was like us all laughing all the time.
Right.
It wasn't one of those houses. I don't know, comedians talk about growing up in houses where you were always competing to be the one that told the joke.
Yes.
And got the laugh. We weren't that type of house at all. We were quite serious and determined.
But the politics or the activism sat alongside the thespianism, did it?
Yes.
I mean, your dad sounds very much like someone who would quite like to have gone onto the stage himself.
Well, absolutely, and he also wrote. Absolutely.
So it's all making perfect sense now. You're not a mystery at all, are you, Jack Thorne?
I'm a nepo baby. Yeah.
The jigsaw pieces are falling into place quite beautifully.
Bristol Street Theatre to this.
So I think seminal experiences, if that's the right word to use, going to see Toad of Toad Hall when you were 6.
Yeah.
That was a moment.
I had to leave because I started crying.
You were traumatised.
I was traumatised when Toad crashed his car. I was very sad for Toad, and then had to be taken out because I was so sad for Toad.
So, I mean, that's a funny anecdote, but it also shows that your relationship with what was happening on the stage was quite complete and quite odd for a 6-year-old to really feel that the action was completely real and unfolding inside your head as well as in front of your eyes.
Yes. And I still struggle with that. I still express emotion far more readily watching things than I do in real life.
Gosh.
For some reason, my brain I was when we were going for the prizes. I watched The Ballad of Wallace Island on the plane, and honestly, I was a mess. I was a horrible, horrible mess. I just couldn't see anyone when they were coming around with food. I was just kind of like looking away because my face, tears and snot dripping down in all sorts of different places. It was awful.
But you're not repressed.
I'm odd.
Okay.
And I'm very comfortable with being odd.
But neurodiverse.
I'm neurodiverse. I'm autistic. I process emotion in slightly weird ways. I think a lot of people do.
Yes.
But yes, my wife knows that, sometimes I smile when I should be frowning.
Yeah.
Sometimes I laugh when I should be crying. That I do struggle with those sorts of tics at times, which can be annoying for her, but she does get it.
Sure. Do you lose yourself like that when you're writing? Do you find yourself snivelling and guffaw when you're in the process of creating? Are you in a similar place?
Sometimes, and
on a good day.
And I worked with a script editor once who said, "Oh, that's strange," because we were working, doing last-minute revisions to something, and I was like, "What's strange?" And she says, "Oh, you're moving like them." So when I was writing, I was somehow moving like the characters.
Wow.
I don't know what that is.
No, nor do I, but it sounds great.
Again, an illness of sorts.
It's not an illness of sorts, it's a diversity of sorts,
yes,
isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose. So. School, primary school. I think you moved when you're 9, so you went to 2 primary schools, presumably. Yeah. That can be quite a difficult experience for a kid.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I was. I remember the moment when suddenly I wasn't popular anymore.
Why?
And why wasn't I popular anymore? I think that I was. I think that you reach a certain point where being bright and sunny and skipping around the place becomes less interesting to other kids. And I was someone who didn't... I think people grew up a lot faster than I did. And then I was surprised by their sophistication.
Okay.
And I was on the outside of that sophistication. And then I didn't quite ever work out a way to climb back into it. But yeah, no, I was very comfortable and happy as a child, and it might have been to do with the move, or it might have been to do with other things. But then suddenly it was like, oh, these people are speaking a language that I don't quite speak.
Was it puberty?
No, it was before that.
It was before that, and just that. I mean, I love that image of suddenly it no longer being enough to be dancing around happily and merrily. But kids are trying to be cool, were they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And you didn't speak that language.
I didn't speak that language, and my kid is now 9, and I'm now watching him very carefully, hoping that he manages that jump better than I did. I think 10 is a very hard age for a boy. I think girls have gone through that earlier, but I think boys... There's a moment around 10 where they start to realise that friendship isn't a given. But
did you stop being popular, or did you become unpopular?
I think it's more that I stopped being popular.
That's what I thought.
And then
so it's
didn't
weird.
Quite work out how to be popular again.
Yeah. What were you like in class? I think you've described yourself, certainly in your secondary school, as the clever kid, that clever kid.
Yeah. A bit of that, and a bit of, a bit mouthy at times. And a lot more comfortable in the classroom than the playground, certainly. And I always liked teachers, and I always had quite good relationships with my teachers, and I was very lucky with the teachers I got, I think.
You enjoyed studying? You didn't struggle with your studies?
I loved it.
I leaned towards the arts, obviously. And
no,
history
was my thing. English never really grabbed me.
Oh, really?
But history, the stories in history was always the thing I was drawn to, Italian unification, things like that, where I got really excited by it and was really excited by working out who everyone was and how it all worked and how the story changed. And I think it was just literally I liked the stories of it rather than I necessarily observe the movements of it.
So you must have had good teachers. I've got Mr. Sharp and Mr. Norris on my list.
Yeah. Oh, that's an amazing list. Well done, whoever's researched this. Do you know what I mean? Like,
How dare you?
But yeah, no, they were both amazing, and I've seen them since and said thank you. But I hope they realise how grateful I am to them.
I hope they're listening to this, because if they didn't realise before, then they will do now, and they have witnessed your success, your subsequent success. So, I mean, that notion of the story then being the real reason why you would love history. It could have been literature, it could have been drama. It just happened that these teachers were probably better storytellers than some of the other teachers. I
think so, and they were both. Interest in drama too, actually. Both I met for the first time doing the Newbury Community Play, where they were both in it. My Sharpie, Mr. Sharp, played a dance tutor with a French accent, whilst my mum was one of the dancers that he was instructing. So it was.
So when did you start indulging your own sort of ambitions in that direction? Where did you join the theatre troupe yourself as well?
No, that was because my parents were doing it.
So you were just sitting in the audience?
But no, I wasn't. I was in it.
So you did, but not because you particularly wanted to, just because
I could sing, and I was quite a good boy chorister. So I sang a song in the play. I sang a song about the Pelican, which is a pub in Newbury. It was this guy came and wrote a play about Newbury and about the Civil War, and it was a play that involved everyone in the community. It was a cast of, I would say, at least 70 doing, creating this show together that told the story of that time, and I was one of the 70, and so I sang a song about the Pelican pub.
But there's no sense here of in the film of your life, this isn't the moment where your little eyes settled upon the playwright and thought that one day.
No.
Okay.
No.
You're just there because.
No, I wanted to be a politician or an actor.
So you were very politically active from
Yes.
quite an early age as well. The two go hand in hand. I mean, I think, didn't Tony Blair want to be a politician or an actor or a rock star? Actually?
He wanted to be a rock star, yeah.
Tomato.
Absolutely. I did lots of politics.
How? So you joined the Newbury constituency Labour Party at a young age?
And I was a young Labour officer, and I joined because my mum left, and my mum resigned because of Harriet Harman sending her kids to the London Oratory.
So not even a private school, just a selective school.
Yes.
Wow.
My mum.
That's pretty hardcore, isn't it?
Yeah. But my mum was my mum walked out of friends' houses when they started talking about how good private school was, or how good, that they wanted their kid to go to a grammar or any of that stuff. My mum was very, very against all that stuff. And so she left, and then a woman called Stevie Hessler was talking to me. We were at Yvonne's house, who was the woman who lived across the road, and in one of those sort of like suburban little parties, and she said to me, "Your mum's left, so now you've got to join." And I said okay, and I joined the party, and then I went to every meeting, and I was made young Labour officer of a tiny party. I think we got 1,100 votes at the by-election. I mean, we were a very, very small party, but full of very, very people that were incredibly passionate.
And what did you bring to that?
I don't think I brought anything at all. I just.
What did you take? What did you get out of it?
I was just excited to be there.
Yes.
I remember us doing a debate on whether to make a statement about St Helena and the citizenship of St Helena, and getting very involved in whether we as a Newbury constituency Labour Party should send a delegation.
What is our line on St Helena?
And it was that sort of thing, and I loved all that. And
why do you think you loved all that? What do you think it was that appealed to you?
I think I was made to feel important.
Yeah.
If you're the young person in a group of adults and they listen to what you say, that's really nice. But also, I think that idea of being part of something that's trying to change. My dad couldn't be a member of the Labour Party. My dad was a planner, so it wasn't appropriate for him to join. So it was literally just me going along on my own. And that thing of being separate from your parents, being interested and interesting to someone, I think I found very exciting.
And possibly that kind of enthusiasm, that merriness, that joie de vivre that had become unhelpful to you when you were 10 or 11 suddenly became quite a nice attribute to have again in this sort of company. Or am I being a bit too pat?
I think all that stuff had died a death by that point, and I was a bit more greasy and unloved than skipping around.
But you did speak. You enjoyed speaking.
I enjoyed speaking,
and you were good at it.
No, I wasn't good at it, but I enjoyed speaking, and I enjoyed just being part of a discussion.
So those two horses are now running, the actor and the politician.
Yes.
So when you came to choose your A-levels with a view to going to university, was setting your sights on Cambridge part of that process? Or
no, not at all.
What was that about?
And I did. I swapped between 7 different A-levels in my first term of sixth form. My school were very nice.
Why?
Yeah, I started off doing maths, economics, English, and drama.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing economics, politics, and history. No, I wasn't doing economics. I was doing history, drama, maths, and English.
Blimey.
And I just dropped them all because I've just realised I didn't belong in any of those places. And then basically, Mr. Sharp said, "Okay, Sharpie said, okay, you can join the politics class." And then my dad said, "I think you should think about economics rather than maths because you're struggling with maths." And they allowed me to swap across that. So I did them all in my first term. So no, I wasn't, and I wasn't even in my house. I wasn't the, you know what I mean. I wasn't supposed to be that. My older sister Jo, she was the one that got the best GCSEs in the school and was on her way and all that kind of stuff. I got okay GCSEs, but I wasn't expected to do, Oxbridge or anything like that.
So what happened?
I really loved those 3 A-levels.
Right.
Once I found those 3 A-levels, it was I flew. They were just the ones that suited me, and I really loved economics. And so just suddenly I felt like I had somewhere where I was clever in the right way, clever in
the right way.
And then by the end of my lower 6, it was like, oh, okay, you're doing really well.
Have a crack at Oxford.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a sort of dichotomy here, isn't there? Because you're fully engaged with that side of life and doing things like joining the Labour Party and doing the theatricals. But I've read that at the same time you were painfully self-conscious and very shy and would sometimes eat your lunch alone in the library while other kids around you were chattering away.
A bit of that, yeah.
A bit of that.
Yeah.
So that doesn't quite make sense, does it? The idea that in some contexts you can be very much meshed as a cog, and yet in other contexts, even in the same building, just in a different room, you're not meshing with everything around you.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that... I don't know how to describe it, really. No, I was sort of just an outsider that wanted to be an insider, and where I wasn't able to make a connection, I sometimes hid. Okay. Because hiding was easier than accepting the fact that I didn't belong in this group of friends or didn't belong in this discussion, and I did find that type of life quite difficult to penetrate. And so, that sometimes I avoided.
So settling on becoming a politician or an actor is almost like attack is the best form of defense. If I could push into these areas, then I'm going to overcome these issues.
Yeah. But also, I think if you looked at, certainly if you looked at actors, I know actors better than I know politicians. You know politicians very well,
right.
But they're often outsiders.
Yes, it's true.
They're often people that don't know how to fit in, and I think, and that's what gives them their ambition in some ways. So yeah.
Yes, the drive. You're right, actually. Young Labour Conference in 1997 was where one of these dreams dissolved, I think.
Yes.
Because you met a bunch of politicians and thought, I'm not having any of this.
Well, the weird thing was, so the students young Labour students, or whatever they were called, Labour students, I don't know the name of the organisation,
Sure.
had basically decided the big thing while we were convened was to select our officer for the NEC. And it was a stitch-up that it had already sort of been decided, and they were all so of a breed that was really difficult to see. You just sort of watched them, and they moved in a certain way, and it was, I think, young people sometimes reflect something more boldly than older people
Yes.
portray. And I think that sort of Mendelssohnian spirit had penetrated the students so heavily that they were all sort of behaving like they understood the world. They were all sort of, and I just found that against what it wasn't. It wasn't how we were in Newbury CLP.
Well, no, but it also wasn't how you were at home. It wasn't what politics was for.
No.
For gamesmanship and backroom meetings and deals and tap noses.
Exactly. And I think that it was just the sort of slightly negative aspects of Blairism became massively magnified at young level.
So you didn't become any less political. You just became less enamoured of politics.
Yes, and I just thought maybe this isn't the world in which I will get on. Maybe I'm not built the way that they are built. And if that is what is necessary in order to make your way, I don't think I'll be able to make my way in that circumstance.
Quite high levels of self-awareness as a teenager, even when you're being self-critical. But that sort of this isn't. I can't do this. Isn't from. I mean, a lot of kids. As teenagers, don't really have much concept or accurate concept of where they fit into the world.
I was very, very ambitious.
Yeah.
And I think I've always been very, very ambitious.
For what?
Something.
Status?
Maybe.
Success.
A bit of status. But yeah, just the idea of...
notice. I want to be noticed.
Exactly. Or just I want to feel like I've done something.
Yeah.
I want to accomplish something, and I need to work out how I can accomplish it. And, going to Cambridge was part of that.
So
it was
that's
part
next.
of that.
You got into Cambridge the summer of '97, I think.
Yeah. And
was that a big deal?
It was a big deal because there weren't many that went from the school.
Sure.
And so we all got our picture taken and put in the paper. But also, it was a big deal for my dad.
Yes.
And pleasing your dad. That's.
Someone should write a play about that. It was a vindication for your dad and for.
No, I wouldn't say it was that. I just think it was.
Pride.
I just think he wanted it, and I was really pleased to be able to deliver it. And I remember going up for my interview, and we shared a room, in a little B&B, and then he just said, "All right then, bye. I'm going to walk around and just see the sights, and then I'll see you at 5." And that feeling of walking away from him and just kind of going, "Okay, this is on me now."
Yeah.
But knowing that I would really please him if I got in, and I would please myself. And I didn't really understand what it was. We didn't, I chose Pembroke, the college I went to, because it had 3 people in the social and political sciences department, and I assumed that meant that there was more places there. So I thought, it would be slightly easier to get in there than anywhere else. But there wasn't any no one had talked to me about it. No one at school really understood it. It was just me and my mum going through the book and her going, "Well, there's 3 of them here. So should we go for this one?" And it was like, okay. And then turning up, and there was a kid from Manchester Grammar School who had every issue of Politics Today, which he then opened up his briefcase. He had a briefcase and took out every issue of Politics Today and was looking through them to prepare for his interviews. And I was just sat there going, I'm gonna really struggle here.
Wow.
But then I walked into the room, and they were interested in the Newbury bypass, and they were interested in things that I knew from Newbury CLP, and I was suddenly talking about the Labour Party, because they thought, who's this odd kid that's interested in politics like this, who's this odd kid that's done practical politics, because they didn't have many of those walking through the door. And I think that they went, okay, we'll give this kid a shot. Much to their regret, I'm sure, later when I failed to be the ideal student. But,
there were reasons for that. Tell me about the moment you found out you'd got in. Was it a sort of envelope through the door with mum and dad watching on?
No. I just... so I'd been failing driving tests. I'd failed...
You make it sound like a hobby.
Well, I'd failed 5 of them. And 4 of them had been with this woman... Valerie Joy.
Yes.
And Mrs. Joy took me on the 6th one, and on the 5th one I'd failed by driving. I did everything else perfectly, and then I drove the wrong way down a road. I drove on the right hand side of the road all the way down a road, and she said, "I'm sorry, Jack, I've got to fail you for this." And she was as upset as I was. And so my family all went to Bristol for the day, but I stayed behind because I had my 6th driving test. I passed my 6th driving test. Valerie was very pleased for me. And very pleased
to be unconfined.
Very pleased she wouldn't have to see me again. And then I walked down the road from the driving test centre, walked in through the door, and the envelope was on the map. And I opened the envelope, saw the result, and just was on my own trying to work out how to respond to this.
What a day!
It was an amazing morning. And then I phoned them. They were in a phone box because it was before mobile phones, but they phoned me at a certain time to find out if I passed, and I said, I've got some other news too. And it was a great day.
Oh, that's lovely. And then you get to Cambridge, and yes. I think understandably you struggle a bit. You've gone from a state school, you'll be in the sort of midst of great privilege, and you've gone from being a clever kid to being a normal kid, an average kid. How tough was that?
And I think that's what a lot of kids go through at Oxbridge. Yes. That feeling of just like, the thing that defined me is now no longer relevant.
Yeah, of
because these other kids are extraordinary. And that thing of realising, it's the same as at the Labour Party conference. It's the same as with acting, suddenly going, I'm not special in the way that I thought I was special. Gosh. I've got to find a new thing. And that thing of just going, the way that he processes information, the way that he, I found it shocking in the extreme. But I don't think I'm alone in that. I think a lot of people find that shocking.
I've had people tell me the same thing in this room as part of this series. So you wanted to be special, but not in a immodest way, in a mattering way. You wanted to be the best at something.
Yeah, I think so, but. Yeah, I don't know whether you'd describe it as immodest. I think probably modest. I think it's probably slightly immodest.
Do you?
But I think it probably is one of the darker aspects of my personality. But it is there, and I recognise it, and I think it's the thing that keeps me working. And so I'm grateful to it. But I don't see it as an asset, or I do see it as an asset, but I also see it as something that is. Probably, I don't know. We're funny about ambition, aren't we, in this country?
Very.
And I'm slightly scared of my own ambition at times.
Yeah, but you need it to do half of the things you've done. And you have a similar experience now with acting. You get cast as Edgar in King Lear, which is a cracking role.
Yeah.
And you see someone else on the stage who makes you realise, I can't do this either.
Yeah. Plus, I was very tall, and so you're standing there on stage, and you're a big guy, and you're the one that, because sort of you catch the lights almost automatically because you're so big. And then I was opposite. Ben Silverstone played Edmund, and Ben Silverstone is a terrific actor. He still is a terrific actor. And I just kind of went, oh right, okay, you're the one, I'm not the one. I need to rethink.
Good Lord.
Yeah,
again, quite a ruthless pragmatism to your ambition, as it were.
Yes. Did you not have that?
Yeah, I had the same thing with Michael Sheen.
Really?
I wasn't on stage with him, mate. That would be a bit of a stretch. But my first year at LSE, he was in When She Danced with Vanessa Redgrave, the Isadora Duncan play.
Yeah.
And I think they'd plucked him from the final year at RADA to play the role. And I wanted to be an actor at that stage in my life. And, and I said to my girlfriend in the interval, I'm not going to be an actor because I want to be him.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you had.
Yeah.
I want to find something. I want to be really good.
What did he do? Do you remember the moment you saw
him?
Two
performances I saw. I saw Mark Rylance play Romeo when I was about 16.
Wow.
But he was physically very different from me, and he was doing things that I didn't think were the sort of things I would do as an actor if I was better.
Right.
He just seemed to inhabit a different space.
How old was he when he was doing Romeo?
I don't know. It was on a tour. It was. I was at a very posh school, but it was one of those tours that was designed to take the RSC to the regions, and they build a little theatre out of scaffolding. I remember watching that, and probably I was just too young, or my ambition wasn't well formed enough to have thought, shit, I'm never going to be that good. Why am I even bothering with this? But there was something about the way Michael Sheen was when he wasn't talking. Something about the way that he was so completely present, when not just waiting for the opportunity to deliver a speech or waiting for his next line. He was so present.
Yeah.
I just thought, that's mad. I could never do that.
Have you told him that?
I've not had the chance. I think I may have. I don't know that I've had the chance. I've told everybody else.
Yeah.
I've told her. But it's a weird moment.
I made a TV show with Michael.
Of course.
And called Best Interest, and I remember really clearly watching The Rushes one day, and it was a scene. Sharon Horgan was talking to a therapist of some kind, and Michael she wasn't a therapist. She was anyway.
Sure.
And Michael was making toast.
Yeah.
And the camera was just on him, as it was that bit of the capture. And I remember going, we could just show this.
Exactly.
We could just show this. We
that.
could just see this man making toast and understand everything that's going on in his life. I don't know, but some actors can do it. Some actors can do it, and when they can, it is just like, oh my God.
And it's a privilege to witness, but it's also pretty upsetting when you thought you were going to be an actor yourself.
Yeah.
So that's off. Politics is off. And then I like this. This is I don't know if the myth reflects the reality, but because it would have cost you so much to stage a play, you decided you may as well write your own.
Which has got, true.
It's got a touch of the Eric Morecambe's about it.
£65 a night.
Yes, to put one on.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. Over 5 nights, that's £300, and I didn't have it. So it was like, okay, I'll write one. And I thought I wanted to be a director. Right. And then as soon as I started writing, I was like, oh, this feels good.
Tell me about that feeling.
I don't know. It was like putting on a glove and just going, oh, right, this is the glove that's always meant to be here. And it wasn't a good play, and I didn't write a good play for a good long while. I just knew that the joy I got from writing, I couldn't get anywhere else.
That's extraordinary, isn't it? Relief as well, I presume, after 2 sort of failed.
I don't know that it was a relief, because it was like, okay, I've got to work out how to do this.
And you hadn't actually proved that you were very good at it yet.
Yeah. But just
this is the thing I'm going to push and push.
And I knew from that moment onwards, and that's all I really did from that moment onwards.
And then you got catastrophically ill.
Yes.
With a condition I probably mispronounced, so forgive me in advance, with cholinergic urticaria.
That's very good.
Which is almost impossible to convey what it actually is.
Well, if people get prickly heat on their holiday, I basically got a chronic version of prickly heat. So when I had a reaction, if I was in sunlight, if I was near a radiator, or if I was moving, I would have prickles. And if I did any of those things too much, I would be overcome with prickles. And eventually my whole body would be red and swollen and in pain. So it's just like basically a nettle rash that takes over your whole body. That's what cholinergic urticaria is. And at its worst, it was incredibly painful. And at its worst, I was unable to do anything.
You're literally lying flat on your back.
Literally lying flat on my back.
So you have to drop out of university.
Yes.
Postpone your studies, move back home, and lie on your back in the middle of December with the windows wide open, because you were effectively, you've described it as being allergic to moving.
Yes, I was allergic to movement.
How frightened were you?
Very, and I went to see a doctor, and the doctor said, I think this might be forever. And when you hear that, and you're like, oh, okay, so everything that I've been trying to do is now gone. Everything that I want to be is no longer possible, and I've got to work out how to live this life. at the same time, my mum was making me a cake a week, and I was eating a lot because that was the only happiness. So I went from 12 to 18 stone in the space of about 5 months because I wasn't moving.
And you weren't just not physically moving. You'd lost that sense that was obviously very important to you of moving towards something in life as well.
Yes,
whatever it may be, some unspecified but fully satisfying situation.
Yes, I wanted to write by that point, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll write something really brilliant in this sort of, maybe I'll do what Chekhov did when Chekhov was exiled. Exactly. But everything I wrote was awful.
And you also, I think, alienated the friends that you'd made at Cambridge by sending them endless letters, wallowing in stuff. So it was a really horrible moment. This.
Yeah, what would happen was they'd send a nice email to me. Yeah. I'd send a longer email back. They'd reply very nicely with a longer email, and then I'd almost immediately send another long email back, and they'd get exhausted by it.
You can't keep up,
yeah,
can you?
Yeah.
And that's it. That's your life. You're living in that room in your
head.
Exactly. And they're back at Cambridge doing all the other things you do.
And they don't want to deal with me.
Medication, support, therapy, all of these things, and you begin to...
Exactly.
How long did you think it might be forever?
Only a few months.
Only a few months, but you're only 19, 20 when this happened. So.
But they got me on the right regime finally. It took them about... I was gradually getting iller and iller from September, and they were trying me on all sorts of different regimes from September. And in about March, they got me on the right pills.
Right.
And then by that summer, I was feeling better and was able to move a bit more and was able to do things. And, going to the cinema with my parents to watch Hannibal was a big moment for me, and managing to sit through that without being in pain. I was in pain when I arrived. I was in pain when I sat in the seat. I had to wait for my reaction to go down, but it did go down, and then I was able to stay and watch the whole film without too much pain. And that was the moment when I thought, okay, this could be all right.
Blimey. And you kept you dipped your toe back into theatrical a business, but with a company that was a disabled persons theatre group, I think.
Yeah, that was.
Which I cannot pronounce.
Grey Eye.
It is just Grey Eye because it's spelled GRAE.
AE.
It's a great.
Yeah,
so you get no points in Scrabble.
Yeah.
So you and that was.
That was after I went back, finished my third year, and then when I graduated, I went and lived with my brother in Croydon, and I was working at a mission. And I was working in a school, and then I went to this Grey Eye Open Day, and I said, I don't think I belong here. I said to a woman called Alex Bulmer, who's an amazing woman, and I said to her, I don't think I belong here. And she said, what's going on? And I told her what was going on, and she said, of course you belong here. You're a disabled person. And that feeling of belonging to something again. I think I'm always looking for things to belong to.
Yes.
And that feeling of belonging to something and feeling like these people who are going through so much want me to be part of their gang meant a huge amount to me.
Why did you feel that you didn't belong there? Because you weren't in a wheelchair or blind like Alex Bulmer or
exactly.
Or just okay.
Exactly.
And this is subsequently forms a large part of your mission in life is to improve representation and to reflect diversity.
Yes.
Both physical disabilities, neurodiversity,
and change. And we're still in the process of trying to change our industry for the better. There's a whole big group of us now with the TV Access Project, and we're getting there. We're doing things that are really making substantial difference to disabled people, both in the terms of the spaces that they inhabit, but also in terms of the methods that we use. Getting access coordinators on set and having access funding that's specifically for, if you are working with a disabled person, it will not cost you any more to work with that disabled person. The broadcasters will cover the difference, and all those things are really important, and I'm so proud to be part of that.
And you're wielding power that you have accrued as a consequence of what happened next professionally, but it was not a quick process. I'm fascinated. James Graham has sat in that chair as well, and you both must be a little bored of comparisons and observations.
James described me as his nemesis on Desert Island. That was one of the finest moments of my life.
But it's not by one of you; it's by the other. But what struck me talking to him was how, I mean, it's try and try and try again.
Yeah.
And try and try and try again, and write things that never get made, and send scripts off that never get read, and and how do you sustain hope when that is happening, when you're going through that?
I think it doesn't really feel like that. It doesn't really feel like you're failing all the time. It feels like when you get a crack of the door, when a door opens a crack, the excitement you get from that door opening a crack sustains you brilliantly. I remember getting I was part of Payne's Plough's Wild Lunch, which were lunchtime readings at the Young Vic. And I remember phoning my dad and saying, I've been accepted onto this thing. I'm going to have a lunchtime reading at the Young Vic. And my dad saying, is that a good thing? Do you know what I mean? Like, because it was just like, a lunchtime reading in this theatre. And I was like, yeah. And I'm going to be part of what Payne's Plough are doing. And I'm going to be, part of that whole thing. And it's amazing. And those sorts of little victories. Yeah. I met James. We were both in our mid-20s. We were both doing... turning up to the Bush Theatre every time for the writers' nights, where they would give us free tickets to watch the show, and hanging around in the pub afterwards and trying to catch the artistic director's eye, and we felt like we were making progress. I think that it feels like progress. That you are constantly battering, and being told you're crap, but at the same time, there's some people every now and again who say that you're okay, and you live for that, and you live for that.
They sustain you. There's another one, isn't there, where you got an answer phone message that you played to your sister about 500 times.
Yeah. From Teresa to Polsky.
That was it. Yes, that was it. And you must know you're getting better as well. In confident moments, you must know that you're getting better. It's not like being an actor. An out-of-work actor can't do anything, but a playwright who's not getting produced can write.
Yes. Whether you feel you're getting better as you're writing, I don't know.
Okay.
I think that you're trying different things out, and I'd say that still holds true today. Okay. I think if you ask James whether he was getting better now, then we've tried and failed a number of things, and maybe we've learnt lessons from trying and failing. But maybe we're trying and failing at the wrong things, and maybe the stuff that I was writing when I was 25 is better than the stuff that I'm writing now I'm 46. That you don't quite have that sense of
trajectory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're just kind of going.
Of course you don't.
You're just hoping. And you're trying new things all the time, because that's how you think you get better, but you don't know that you're getting better.
And volume as well. I mean, you work very, very hard. You are a workaholic, I think, to coin a phrase. And that's not necessarily a prerequisite for being a playwright. I love John Osborne's memoirs, and I don't think he was ever going to be in danger of having as much stuff on his CV as you already do at 46.
Oh, he did all right.
He did, but he wasn't prolific, was he? Well, what do you think?
No, he was a play a year sort of, wasn't he? I suppose, yes, James and I, and there's a few others of us that are a bit too visible, I think, probably. We want to get stuff made, and we work really hard to get stuff made, and maybe we should slow down, maybe we should speed up. Who knows what the best thing is to do at any moment.
I wouldn't overthink it. I'd just carry on if I were you. That's what things are going pretty well.
Shador Saunders, who is who's the? Do you follow the NFL?
No.
He's the young.
I was running through theatre acronyms then. I know the national. What's he on about?
But his dad,
American football.
And his dad was an American footballer and is very famous. He's known as Primetime, right? And he was interviewed, and he was talking about the fact that his son didn't want to take a job with the Ravens, didn't want to be selected by the Ravens, because the quarterback at the Ravens was a supremely good quarterback that would stay in position forever. And he said, you never learn anything not playing. And I do think that's true. You don't learn anything not playing. That said, you've got to be open when you are playing to learn the lessons of what's happening to you, and sometimes learning those lessons requires some thought, and if you're rushing to the next job, maybe you're not taking the time to think about that, and and that's the thing that I'm trying to keep in my head all the time.
Yes, I get that, because it happened quite quickly. When it happened quite quickly. You mentioned Shameless, that's 2007, and then Skins, but then by 2010 you're doing This Is England with Shane Meadows, which coincidentally I watched 2 weeks ago. I didn't know you were coming in.
The film, because I didn't work on the film.
Did the TV show.
I did the TV show.
The 3 TV.
We did 86, 88, 9.
Yeah, I watched the final one.
Oh, wow.
When did you allow yourself to think that you'd made it?
I asked a writer this. I said we were at the Broadcast Awards and I was there as a guest, and I said, when do you feel like you belong? And he said, you never do.
Not belong, but you've proved yourself.
I've proved something.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy with how my career's gone. But the idea that there's that what you don't get as a writer is ever that sense of a job for life. And
because you're completely focused on what happens next.
Yes, but also you're aware that the work can drop off a cliff and you can be done.
Yeah,
and I had a writing tutor that said, there aren't many playwrights who are any good after the age of 50. I don't know how true that is, but it's haunted me. And I'm now 4 years from 50. So I'm.
When were you confident enough to give up the day job, as it were? When did you think this is I can support myself now?
I was always doing part-time work,
and
so I was always writing and doing part-time work. I gave up the day job when I got a job in writing. So
in a writer's room.
I was working for a director called Pavel Pavlikovsky, and I did that for a year, and then from that I was able to make the Bush money last quite long, and then thankfully I got hired on Skins, and from then I've been all right.
You're over the line.
Exactly.
And you're still on this side of the line.
But I was always trying to make that money sustain as long as possible. It's why I moved to Luton.
Okay.
That you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you are so dependent on the next check in order to sustain your life.
So you've got to say yes to everything.
Yeah, exactly. So I was always trying to work out how to live as cheaply as possible.
And so the next thing, it's out now as we speak. I watched the first 2 episodes of it last night. Is The Hack? Which is the dramatisation of Nick Davies' story, really.
Yes.
And Daniel Morgan's story. I know both stories very, very well. Why did you pick that one?
It was sent to me by a producer I really liked called Patrick Spence, and he said to me, you will think you know this story, but you don't.
I tweeted that last night.
Oh, wow.
Blue sky. I can't get near Twitter anymore. I literally said, it's my job to know this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm reeling at some of the stuff that's coming.
It's amazing. And things like, I think the moment for me when I went, I need to get involved with this was John Yates coming out and saying there's nothing to see here. And when someone does that with a day, it takes a day to investigate what the Metropolitan Police's response should be to this, and comes out and goes, no, it's fine. That's when I went, oh, okay, the story is not what I thought it was, which is this is going to be about journalists behaving badly. This is about how great journalism uncovers the truth when there are a number of different forces that are conspiring against that.
Powerful forces.
Yes. And I think the interesting thing is that it's not a knowing complicity. It's not like you're sitting there and going, Rupert, what do you think I should do in this situation? It's actually just a number of different groups going, it is in our best interests to serve this master. And we will do that to the best of our ability, because then we will be able to sustain our jobs and sustain our livelihood. And one of the darkest things in Nick's book is that the Metropolitan Police's relationship with the press changed after Stephen Lawrence. And you go, the reaction to Stephen Lawrence, this horrific thing that happened, in our capital, the reaction to that is to go, okay, we need to work out our relationship with the tabloids is really, really fascinating to me. And so trying to tell the story of that felt like a very important and interesting thing to do.
And a quite a natural home for you, given those early influences of wanting to make a difference, speaking truth to power, activism, politics.
Yes. I mean, those are the stories I try and tell.
Yeah, always.
Make
it sound epic, and it comes across as epic. It's an epic story. One thing occurred to me today, which is it got the same producer, I think, as Mr. Bates versus the Post Office.
Patrick.
So obviously people will be wondering whether it's going to have a similar impact. And of course it can't, can it? Because the newspapers aren't going to lionize and celebrate this in the way that they could a scandal involving the Post Office, because this is a scandal involving their own.
Yes, so it's also a celebration of their own.
That's
so
true.
It's going to be interesting.
But I'm unlikely to read a paean to it in the Times or the Sun.
No. The Sun's coverage of us was a listing in the TV magazine, which was a new drama starring David Tennant and Toby Jones. That was all it said.
That might be enough to get quite a few people through the door.
Yeah,
but that's extraordinary even now, isn't it? The powers.
Yeah, or just that they just are choosing not to look at it, and that's their decision. Whether the press I don't know how important in what happened with the Post Office. I don't know how important the press was as part of that. I suppose that's what I'm really interested in terms of your take on how journalism has changed so rapidly and we're about to go through the same process, I think, in our industry. We're in the process that you guys went through in terms of digital encroachment, and how where power resides now, because it doesn't reside on social media in the same way, because X isn't the box that it was, and so where outcry sits is a really complicated thing right now.
Yes, it is. It really is, and it's a brilliant drama.
Thank you.
It is. You were talking about having visceral reactions to things while you're watching them. I'd show you the message afterwards. My wife texted from upstairs saying, "Are you all right?" Because at one point I howled.
Oh wow! Thank you very much. Well, not sorry that you howled, but also thank you.
It was a nice howl, and some of the acting is extraordinary. The writing is magnificent, and I want everyone to watch it. I want everyone in the country to watch it. There's some people I could name now who I think should be forced to watch it. But
thank you very much.
Thank you for it. What's next?
We're just in the edit on Lord of the Flies, which has been a journey.
Yes.
On Adolescence, we had one teenage boy. On Lord of the Flies, we had 42 of them.
Good Lord.
On a Malaysian island.
Yes.
But Mark Munden, who's the director, has done an amazing job of that. And then I'm working with Sam Mendes on the Beatles. That's what I'm doing some stuff on that. So
We're still busy.
Yes.
I love that line that you shared quite near the beginning of this about we'll never breathe this same air again.
Yeah.
What ambitions do you have left?
Loads.
But specifically boxes you haven't ticked yet. I don't know that you've ever been like that.
I think that the thing that Stephen and I talked about on that night was it doesn't matter if we ever breathe this air again. We'll still make the same shows. And, Adolescence was the 6th show Stephen and I have made together. I love working with him. And it doesn't matter if the next show doesn't have that impact. What matters is you're making shows with truth and you're trying to tell a story that you think has power to it. It doesn't have to be political. It doesn't have to be anything. It just has to have power to it. And Stephen and I will keep making those shows and hope that a show has the impact of Adolescence again, but not live and die on that basis. Not judge ourselves on whether we can emulate it, but judge ourselves on whether we've kept telling the truth. It
probably happened at quite a felicitous time in both your lives. If it had happened 10 years earlier, it might have had a rather different impact.
Yeah. I think Stephen certainly, was ready for it,
Sure.
and is embracing it and is surfing on top of it. For me, yes, I think we're both quite settled down. Yes, I think that's true. That in different ways,
Yes.
in different places. And we both, Stephen took us all when we were in New York doing some promotion. Stephen made us all go and do hot and colds. So we did the sauna and then the ice bath, and then the sauna and then the ice bath, which is quite something when you're sitting in your swimming costume beside Stephen's agent and things like that. And Jane's lovely, his agent's lovely, but and that just sums up who he is, which is just he's always trying to refine something, make something, and create a group around something, and that still is what excites him, and I think that's what will make him make work forever, which is I think he loved that process of that group, and for me I love telling stories, and so we'll just keep trying to do that.
2 more questions and then I'll let you go. One for my daughters.
Oh wow.
Are we going to have any more Enola Holmes?
We're just in the edit. Yeah, the Enola Holmes 3, which is directed by Phil Barantini, who directed Adolescence, and it's really good. He's done a brilliant job.
Fantastic. And what do Mum and Dad make of all your success?
They are very happy, and they're very proud, and they always worry about what's next, and they still worry about what's next. And when they watch something, they always think quite carefully about it and whether, and they still get nervous about whether they'll think it's good or not. So they're not relaxed about it at all. They're kind of like, oh, do we like this? And they have said, we don't like this about stuff that I thought was good and that did all right. So they're still in judgment, whilst also being very proud of me. And they're proud of their other kids too. And we spend a lot of time together. And they're going to be moving quite near me, which I'm excited by. And we spend every Christmas together. We go to and they spend Christmas with my wife's family too, which is lovely. So we all sort of like get together and have big Christmases and so they're still very much, I don't know, they're in conversation with me constantly.
Jack Thorne, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.